Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
Casen, I got to admit, man, every week we've had this, Joe, I am incredibly grateful for it and yourself. This is one of those weeks where I feel like I need the show. You get what I mean by that?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm fine. I mean, I just, a lot going on middle of the week. A lot of the time, if you know what I do for work, my midweeks kind of at times feel like weekends and vice versa. It's a little strange with the way my work weeks kind of flow into the next, but I'm good. Just looking forward to speaking to you. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I definitely get can get what you're saying. We've talked at length, about, some of the stuff I do with work and it just one of those days had a bit of a mentee bee, but we're over it, we're past it, we're all good. You know
That's
how that goes.
I do know how that goes, and so maybe this is coming at the perfect time for both of us. We're recording this on a Wednesday night. We're thankful for all of you out there that view, listen, and everything. And we have what I think is probably a relatively shorter lineup actually this week. As if the cover of the show wasn't any indicator, obviously we're kind of in our weekly playoff kind of run here. Before we really get going, Casey and I just wanted to acknowledge the tragedy and devastation in Los Angeles. Um, what kind of shocked me a little bit, Kason, was that how quickly it happened because it wasn't really even in the news cycle when we did our show a week ago, and we did our show a week ago tonight.
hmm
Uh, I believe the Palisades fire started on January 7th, which would have been the day before we recorded our last show, and then that was obviously international news 24 to 48 hours after we recorded.
hmm
So I just wanted to acknowledge, my thoughts, prayers, well wishes go out to everyone affected. And we also definitely wanted to acknowledge it because it directly affected something we're going to talk about later in the show, being the literal location of one of the playoff games, among many other things. So go ahead, man.
No, yeah, I definitely just want to say that it's awful um to see that we've seen, a lot of wildfires out in that region over the last few years, and this one I think feels like it probably hit the largest number of people. And it at least, as bad as it is to say, I think a lot more people were paying attention because there were a lot of celebrities who got affected.
Yeah,
I mean, that
I
that
mean,
shouldn't,
absolutely.
change it, but when you see, so and so lost their house, that definitely makes headlines more than random people.
Which the random
Which
people and
sucks.
normal people are the majority of people affected, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I actually do have some family out there that lost everything.
I was
So,
going to ask you about that.
um,
With I know you have family in Los Angeles, in Las Vegas, so I wasn't sure.
well, it extended family. There's a member of my family that moved to Pasadena, a
Wow.
number of years ago. And so yeah, from what I know, they lost pretty much everything. So,
Well, thoughts and prayers with you and your loved ones, man. I wondered that, which was another reason why I wanted to open the show as well. I thank you for sharing that on here with me. And, if anything else, donate what you can. I think I said it when Hurricane Helene went through on the show because I had a direct at the time. You have a direct kind of connection to this one. I had a kind of direct connection to that natural disaster as well. Is that I really highly encourage you to ignore the political noise and any kind of like driving dividing discourse when it comes to natural disasters. I mean, it doesn't really matter how or when we got to this point and what could or could not have prevented anything. What matters is helping the folks who need it now and going forward. And that's just I want to say that because I think that has completely gotten lost in this day and age of how divided we are. So
mhm,
I know you agree. So
absolutely.
that being said, we are going to go forward here. We do have like I said, a shortened lineup for you tonight. And ironically, something that came to us today, and actually I found, Kaysen found out was delayed because of the fires, and that was the release of the Daredevil Born Again trailer, which came out on Wednesday. We're recording this on Wednesday. It kind of got put on the front of our thing here, and I kind of tacked it on to the beginning just for kind of a quick pop culture hit before we get into the sports segment of our show. We are an
Well,
entertainment show. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, before we get into that, there are a number of things that are being affected by the fire just because
Hmm.
the hub of movies, entertainment, music,
The entertainment
everything
capital of the world is there.
is in Los Angeles, and so it affected a lot of things. I mean, I know there's some people who were announcing things that got delayed. There were some rumblings that um I think Beyonce or something had some announcement scheduled for
Wow.
I don't know if it was about a tour maybe. I don't know for sure, but the just some rumors and stuff. But yeah, a lot of people put that on the back burner.
Yeah.
I know it's going to affect the Grammys coming up here in a few weeks because typically prior to Grammys, there's a lot of events for music going into that. I think like the month before, and so that's supposed to be starting about soon. Um, and that's all I think not happening or happening in a different virtual way. So that's very unfortunate for a lot of people who rely on that.
Yeah, the Grammys have a little bit of a campaign season, sort of like the Oscars and Golden Globes do, right? It goes without saying that this is going to loom over almost quite literally the entire award season and probably Los Angeles as a whole for the better part of the coming years,
Yeah.
no matter what way you slice it. So I didn't say that to sound callous. I know for a fact that that is a what we were going to talk about, open the show with, was affected as well. So, um, regardless of which, I did get a chance to see it twice today, the Daredevil trailer. I don't know how many times you got a chance to see it, Casen, but I before we talk about it
Mhm.
on the cast, I always try to make sure I watch it a couple of times to make sure I go through it. Had we done an anticipated shows list as we did movies last week, this would have been probably at the top of mine in terms of shows I knew about coming out. Uh, I want to just go ahead and say spoiler alert for anything Daredevil. The Daredevil show happened on Netflix a while back. It was really when we were both still in college. Casen is really when it had its
Yeah.
peak. The first season was really good. I didn't love the second season as much, but the third season of Daredevil was incredibly slept on because there was uncertainty with the show, and I'm the only one I know that like actually watched the whole thing. Um, and I will get into that in a moment. But I would like to hear if you had seen any of that, and if you didn't, what were your thoughts on the trailer or anything with Daredevil?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen most of it. I think I saw a little bit of the first season, but so I wasn't super knowledgeable on that. Uh, but from what I do recall from seeing, the different Netflix movies with, or shows such as, Jessica Jones and things like that. Um, the trailer to me, and I think we, expected it, but the trailer to me looks a lot like it. I mean, they're
Hmm.
not pulling any punches when it comes to the gore and the violence, and we saw it with the Echo show, that it was going to be heading in that direction, and so this definitely looks a lot like but is something from that original Netflix series.
I got to be honest with you. I was a little bit surprised that there was no like viewer discretion advised at the beginning of that trailer.
Yeah, that's true.
I
That's true.
like we're about
Yeah.
halfway through the trailer. I was like, whoa, okay, like this is
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
I mean, Disney Plus has long since kind of taken the training wheels off as far as that content goes. Like if you go to Disney Plus, it's pretty
Mhm.
clear what's what. But I was a little surprised that like just the trailer they just put it out there. There was no kind of red band or anything like that. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, the
Yeah.
violence is definitely here. Let me just say that was my reaction, and I would
I
agree.
did you watch it? Did you watch it on YouTube or on Twitter, X, whatever?
Both. I
Okay.
saw it on X first, and then I went to YouTube, and I still didn't see any discretion.
Okay. Well, because I was wondering if they didn't put it on Twitter because it's like, why is anybody under the age of 18 on Twitter anymore?
Right. But I just watched it from Marvel Entertainment on YouTube, and there's no warning. I mean,
I
so
I mean I would hope, yeah, that's a parental thing, but
oh yeah, it's gonna. I mean,
they
it's gonna
they
be
they they're definitely getting a bunch of comments from angry parents that are like, I thought
I
Daredevil was going to be for my 8-year-old.
Oh, right, and that's and I think they've done a pretty good job. And I have to commend two people big time. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, because if you recall, they were like a halfway through the real season of this, like a year ago, scrapped the entire thing and went back to
Mhm.
the drawing board of this whole thing. And I commend those two guys because they were a large part of the writing of this whole show. And I would encourage anyone out there to at least watch a synopsis on YouTube of the seasons of Daredevil, because you could almost totally understand their relationship by seeing the first season, because the first season of Daredevil is his entire origin story. Okay. And it's also the Kingpin origin story, of which I think most MCU people would have been introduced to him in Hawkeye. It's very very dark. You get both of them to kind of explain them as characters, but at the same time, I I think this is going to do a good job of kind of bridging that gap and saying, here you go. But the reason I said spoiler warning is because one of the best graphic novels ever put together, like one of the best translations from comic book to screen, is Daredevil, because the 80s Devil run with Frank Miller and others is essentially what this is adapted from. You know, in the 80s there was a hyper focused on violence. Comics got a lot more violent, entertainment got a lot more violent, and Daredevil in a lot of ways just pulled no punches as a comic book, so much so that they started to run it without the parental advisor thing without the seal of approval thing at the top right that was at comics for the longest time, which is essentially the opposite of having the parental advisor on there. That not being on it at the time was like having that on there today.
Okay.
And that's to explain it to you. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is not necessarily for all ages. And Daredevil Born Again, the story itself, is the story of what happens to Matt Murdock when Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, finds out his identity. Well, that was season 3 of Daredevil. They adapted that book in season 3 of Daredevil. If you want to see a lot of beats play out, and it was really, really good. And I have to say, it's not really a short watch either, because it was done in that old Netflix style where it's 13 episodes and they're like 40 minutes each. It's it's not a like it's a long show, and that's why I think it's going to be kind of a tough watch with the way they've kind of streamlined it a little bit for Disney Plus. Um, this show looks like it has the name. It shares the name Daredevil Born Again. That's where the name came from. But Daredevil Born Again, the show, it looks like it's going to be adapted the latest graphic novel, which happened in the last 5 years, which is called Devil's Reign. And it's about when Kingpin became mayor of New York City, right? And of in the MCU, which is a huge deal because he essentially declares martial law on superheroes. I don't know if they're going to do that here, because obviously other characters probably won't be in the mix in terms of like gargantuan, but I find it very interesting that this is going to come again after um Captain America, right? And in between Thunderbolts, again, some grounded level heroes. It's like, okay, this is happening in DC. What's going on in New York? Okay, what's going on internationally with Thunderbolts? So it's a whole other element thrown into what we were talking about last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said a lot,
Well,
so I just want to hear you respond. I'm sorry.
no, yeah, I will have to see how it plays a part in it. I wonder if well, it definitely feels like we could get a mention of Fisk maybe in Captain America of something about oh that guy in New York is
Yeah,
really
or like
gonna be
Wilson Fisk just became mayor of New York,
yeah,
because in our real life, the mayor of New York's a pretty prominent political position anyway.
yeah.
So yeah, it looks cool, man. I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited.
They did a great job of not really telling you at all what's happening. You just
No,
saw a bunch of cool action shots and you have no idea what's happening.
and I've always loved the idea in a conflict or story, long term or short term, where the antagonist and the protagonist sit down and talk. The idea
Hmm.
of you see the two sides of the coin, and barring an antagonist is written well, every antagonist, very good antagonist that you remember, is the villain, is the hero in their perspective. That is Wilson Fisk to a T. He absolutely believes that everything he's ever done is for the good of his loved ones, his city, and that there's no
Hmm.
other, and everything he's done is a means to an end and absolute loyalty. He's a very scary, as we talked about on the show before, Marvel villain. And Vincent D'Onofrio plays him incredibly. I think that's one of those really great castings, as is Charlie Cox with Matt Murdock, who's like, no, it shouldn't be that way. And yet you have that other dynamic of the devout Catholic character and lawyer. His persona is the devil by night, the Daredevil. It's I
Mhm.
can just hear Stan Lee saying it's perfect. It's a blind superhero because justice is blind. It just makes a lot of sense. Like I can hear, can
Now,
you hear him saying that in the offices like
yeah, yeah.
60 years ago.
No, I mean, stop me if I'm wrong. I don't know if
Yeah.
we've really talked about that. We probably talked about it when the show was announced or whatever. But it to me, it's still crazy that they kept Charlie Cox. Um,
They kept the whole cast. What you don't realize is that the whole cast is back.
well, yeah,
Karen and Foggy are also two huge characters from the comics. They showed the three of them in that trailer. I'm like, oh, they're all back. Like genuinely, they're all back.
yeah, which is insane
Yeah,
because
they kept
it's kind
everyone.
of like if they come along Spider-Man Homecoming, oh, it's Andrew Garfield again. Like it's crazy for them to
Hmm.
just keep not just one actor but the everybody from the show when it moved properties like that. And
Yeah.
you don't you haven't really you haven't seen that in anything else, right?
You
I can't think of anything else.
you know the only thing that the MCU could do right now that would be even more nuts is if they somehow brought back the entire cast of like Agents of Shield. If they did that, I'd be
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
"Whoa!" Like there was some lore breaking stuff in that show, and we're just bringing Colson and everyone back. Like, whoa! Like I'd be
That
like,
would be yeah,
that
that'd
would
be
be like
outrageous.
that would, outrageous is the perfect way to put it. That's the only thing they could do more nuts than this, I think. Um, but I'm happy they brought a whole cast back. You got a little bit of a taste of Daredevil and She-Hulk, but nothing of how he's actually like, really.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was just kind of a confirmation that at least Charlie Cox is here. I'm really excited for it. And I hope it kind of gives me what I'm looking for from a Daredevil character. I mean, I've told this to people. Daredevil's probably my second favorite Marvel hero all time. He's probably the hero besides Spider-Man that I've read the most of and have the most literature backstory of his character. And I've always really thought that his writing is really cool, even today, in that, like, what does a world look like where they explore the idea of religion in a world and universe that has actual godlike figures, right? Well, they do that through
Mhm.
Matt Murdock, and they've never been afraid to tackle those in his books. So even his modern day comics are great. I mean, I highly recommend Daredevil Born Again. I highly recommend Devil's Reign. Both they're both great books, and I think this show is going to capture that a lot. I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I guess, to follow up what I said before anybody angrily texts me like I'm an idiot, I wasn't really counting like the Deadpool, the Sony cameos, because like those are cameos with the intent purpose of those people coming back. Like I'm saying, like an actual show with the people from different properties.
Right, right. Not they're playing the exact characters that they were. And
Yeah,
the other thing about that, I think, to go along with what you just said is by doing that, they've canonized everything that happened in Daredevil seasons 1 through 3. That's the
yeah.
thing that I think is like,
It's the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out, which is remade with the people from the movie from 2005.
yeah,
Like,
I'd be like, okay, so we're establishing that all of that's okay, you know? Um,
got Michael Chiklis.
well, and it's funny because there's nothing that really happened in the Daredevil series um, that really affected the MCU. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because Netflix was kind of in this weird spot of let's tell a story but make it adjacent. Looking back, it's kind of crazy that Marvel and Disney ever let Netflix do that in actuality, because they did
Yeah.
that. There was Iron Fist, Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones. So, um, all with pretty good casts. Not all were great shows. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I didn't watch them all, but Iron Fist was not good. Gave it a try. Luke Cage's first season, from what I heard, was good. Second, no. Anyway, I'm excited. But you want to get into college football?
Yeah, yeah, let's get into that.
Cool. So we had two games happen since our last show. The semifinals are both in the books, and to shut me up hard, they were both good games. To be expected. And, I think. maybe. Well, let me just go ahead and say Ohio State defeated Texas 28-14, I believe, was your final. Yes. One of those rare games where it's just like a straight touchdown game. Like there were no field goals. Like
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
always I refer to those as video game scores now because it just feels like college football 25 is the only way that can happen. And then we had Notre Dame defeat Penn State 27-24, which literally ended on a last second field goal. So, you want to get into these in order, Kason?
Yeah, yeah, we can start with Notre Dame, Penn State. Um, yeah, I mean, as we discussed, predicted Penn State, which could have been right,
Easily
except
could have been
for,
right.
yeah, I didn't really predict Drew Aller having probably the worst throw of his entire college career, at the very end of that game. But
He has a
yeah,
whole year, unless he's declared and I've missed it. He has a whole year to impress you
no,
more.
he's coming back. He's
There
coming
you
back.
go. He's
Yeah,
got a whole another year to,
yeah,
to outdo that one.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I thought it was a pretty even matchup between those two schools. I thought it was kind of a combination of good defense and maybe some hampered offense. I mean, Penn State has Tyler Warren,
Yeah,
and that's about it. They the shocking stat of the night was Penn State did not complete a pass to a wide receiver the entire night. They
that
only
really is something.
they
That's
only threw to tight ends and the running backs, which
is also a tribute
crazy.
to good defense by Notre Dame as well.
Well,
Good
I don't know
pass
if it's
D,
bad.
but
I don't know if
also
it's defense, but just really bad offense.
and I also
Mm.
don't want to really pile on Drew Aller. All kidding aside, because they don't get there without his play.
Oh,
And
no, 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 no. I'm
yeah,
not saying that's on him. I'm just
right.
saying
I'm
I'm
saying that
saying
more
that's
for
on the
other
coaching
people that are
staff.
going to
Yeah.
hear this.
Yeah. I all year long, Penn State's had issues with receiver. They
Yeah.
just don't have them. I mean, they for whatever reason, I do not understand how like a top 10 program, probably the third best team in the Big Ten, can just have a roster with no wide receivers that are able to get any amount of separation at all.
You know,
It's bizarre to me.
I agree, and it is a
It,
little
it's
strange.
like Michigan. It's like how is Michigan completely unable to have a quarterback who can throw a forward pass? Like
Well,
bizarre, bizarre.
I, I would agree with that. What is interesting is that there's trade offs, right? Because Penn State constantly has arguably the best running back room in the country
That's true.
every single year, at least for the last 5 years they have, because their top three guys are easily ones at any other major school, like they're 5-star guys. And their offensive line's always good. So I mean, their rushing
Yeah.
attack's always really, really great. But it is a little surprising that there isn't like a wide receiver one type. I mean, they've had guys come in and out over the last few years. I forget the dude; he wore number 5, but that was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
There was the Jahan Dotson.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yep, John. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kasen. Completely had no idea. I just knew his number.
Am I
Uh, mhm.
did KJ Hamler? Did he go to Penn State?
I don't know. You can look that up.
I don't know. I don't know that name
Whatever.
offhand up to my head. But
All I was going to
anyway,
say is
yeah.
it's not that unbelievable to me, but I also think that they never had like their offense essentially adapted in such a way as to where they didn't really need the deep threat. You know, it does make you wonder. Okay, if they had a deep threat, would they have won this game? Hard to say because Drew Aller still has to complete the pass, and an interception ended the game. So, which will actually take that back. Interception didn't end the game. Interception put Notre Dame in really really good field position to end the game. And
Yeah.
if Penn State's defense makes a couple of plays, who knows if Drew Aller is even the scapegoat with that end. But uh, I don't know. I in a world where I thought it was interesting. I'll just say in the circle of folks I have that are Penn State fans of the chats that I'm in, it seemed like the chat definitely like overwhelmingly blamed it on Drew Aller. Where I'm like, guys, James Franklin is still over there, who has not won like a big game, and all that same stuff about him still applies. I'm just saying, as much as I
No,
hate to,
yeah. I mean,
put it on someone's shoulders,
James Franklin deserves a lot of credit for
he does.
maintaining Penn State at this level. I mean, it's just I think some people in the Penn State fan base need to take a look in the mirror and acknowledge what Penn State is, and they either need to just go all out and buy a national championship,
Yep.
and like they need to figure out what they want to do because it's going to take more resources than they have been putting in, which is a lot, to get over the hump. Because look, James Franklin is great. He's easily probably top 15 coach. It's just he's getting out coached by some young guy who has only been at Notre Dame for a couple of years, and James Franklin's been coaching for a long time, and so
Well,
it's
Marcus Freeman has been a long time as well. I actually had someone point out to me the night that that game was going on is it's kind of crazy how literally 1 decade ago he was at Kent State for 2 years.
mhm.
As as a defensive positions coach, I believe. The road is long. I mean, I think I'm a living testament to that of just by even at this point in my career, the amount of places that have affected me or I've have made me who I am in my career, right?
No, so
Um,
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying head coach.
I get you. I get what you meant. I get what you meant. On the same, the other side of that coin though is that the Irish played great, man. That is a legit defense. I mean,
They did, yeah.
I think there's a few dudes in here I could see absolutely playing on Sunday for a long time that we're going to remember
Mhm.
from this playoff. And I think part of that is also because of how long we've gotten to see these teams, right? That's the fun of this. The one thing I would say is Penn State was literally like essentially a coin toss in this game away from winning. Keep going, man. I mean, they've Ohio State has showed you that again. Just buy a really good NFL caliber roster like Ohio State did. And I know Penn State fans, I can hear them already typing. Franklin would find a way to screw that up too. Well, okay. Ohio
Well,
State fans were saying way worse about Ryan Day like a month ago.
no, exactly. And I mean, here's the thing.
Calm
I've
down.
already Penn State already has those running backs coming back. They
Yeah,
they already said they're coming back. There's a lot of conversations on the internet saying maybe Penn State could be next because you look at what sort of happened is Michigan had a bunch of guys come back for their last year and it got them a national championship. Ohio State had a bunch of guys come back this year
yeah.
and it got them so far to the game. We'll see what
They're
happens
gonna win a
on
national
Monday.
championship.
But but and it seems like Penn State's having that happen to them. So that is
Penn
the
State's
thing
gonna
is
win a
that
national championship next year, maybe.
it could be. I mean, if certain people might want to predict that certain ways, there might be some benefits to that, but we'll see about that. But I that's an outcome some people might care about, but
Yeah,
the but all they need to do is just get some receivers. If they can add some vertical height to their offense, that will help a ton.
if I'm like a 4 or 5 star like player looking to for a place to land right now, I like the stock of Penn State and everything they have coming back almost more than any other Big Ten team. I
Yeah,
just because of
absolutely.
what Ohio State's losing. The only other one would probably be Oregon, just because Oregon with Dan Lanning, I think they're just going to reload
Hmm.
and be good still.
Yeah.
But and just all the gear you get at Oregon. But I mean, I think they're going to be able to lure some guys to Penn State. That we see a few guys like a Caleb Downs, maybe not him directly, but someone like him coming up to Penn State, going to State College. So, um, but I wanted to say all that to have Penn State fans just pause for a moment and be like, hey, you lost to a really good Irish team and there's so many storylines. Marcus Freeman, we haven't gotten to the other game yet, but Marcus Freeman, who might be the smartest coach in college football at a very base level. No knock on anyone's intelligence, but just the way the guy carries himself is incredible. And he doesn't say too much either. It's kind of just like business as usual. Um, he's very even flow kind of guy. And he's going to be the first black head coach to coach in the national championship game. I mean, how amazing is that? Um, Total side note, totally unrelated. I love the crew neck sweatshirt. That's just the Notre Dame helmet with the gold gleaming.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I actually think that whoever kind of came up with that design, hats off, deserves a raise. Incredible. Because you see that and it's like, oh, that's Notre Dame. uh, And yeah, Notre Dame's really, really good. They fought their
Yeah, no,
way to the national championship game.
absolutely. And I mean, you kind of saw the way that the game transpired because it was looking like it was all Notre Dame
Hmm.
or sorry, all Penn State before halftime, and then Notre Dame gets a field goal to end the half. They get the ball coming out of half, and they next thing you know, it's tied 10-10.
Hmm.
And whatever Freeman said in the locker room at halftime, it was pretty much all Notre Dame after that.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey,
and you could see it on the podium after the game. He definitely knows how to talk to his guys and get them up and motivated.
barring my math being totally wrong here, it's kind of crazy how 31 combined points were scored just in the fourth quarter between these two teams. Well, Notre Dame getting a pair of touchdowns and a field goal to win it, and Penn State also getting a pair of touchdowns just in the fourth quarter. Um, it's like, oh snap, the offenses came alive, and it's like, okay. And also the defenses got tired, right? They tend to get wear down, and that's how it happens. So, do you want to flip to the other game, and then we can kind of talk about the dynamic between the two?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously, another kind of like, unstoppable force meets a movable object type game. This game, through most of its runtime, was pretty uneventful, really. Ohio State and Texas. And then, like, the whole really fourth quarter happened. I will admit, with this game, I really only got a chance to watch the fourth quarter, but I watched
I
the whole thing.
I would beg to differ and say the first 5 minutes was very eventful,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because it Ohio State came out guns ablazing like you thought they would. It was a lot like the Oregon game where they came out ready to go. However, they got up 7-0 pretty quickly, forced Texas to punt, got the ball back. They're about to go up 14-0. However, something happened and Trevion Henderson uh, punched a guy, whatever, got a personal foul,
sure.
and that backed them up deep, and that basically ended that drive. And then from that point on, Ohio State just couldn't get anything going again.
Hmm.
And
It was rather stationary, though. I mean, it really, it had the feeling of like someone's got to be the person to break this open. Someone has to
mm,
be the person to break this open.
yeah,
And you could kind of see it coming. Ohio State gets the long drive, and then it's like, okay, it's up to Texas to respond or not. And man, it took both drives just took the whole quarter. I mean, it was really good football being played. uh, and
yeah, it
yeah,
was
go ahead.
very funny because it was. I want to just make sure I got this right. So
I don't want to say Jack Sawyer just yet. That's why.
it was yeah, it was 14-14 at the end of the third.
Yep.
And then uh I'm gonna make sure I get that time right. Yeah, so it took about half of the fourth
Hmm.
for the yeah,
And then Quinshon
exactly. So
Jenkins, like they went down the 13 plays, 88 yards, 7 minutes and 45 seconds off the clock. Quinshon Jenkins has a 1 yard touchdown run to go up 21-14, and then it was Texas's turn to respond. And man, I really thought they were going to. I was really kind of
yeah.
hoping for overtime. I was watching this game literally on a bus, so on my phone. So I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens here. And there's something kind of fun about having that too. It's kind of cool with that. And then wow, they get down to whatever it was the red zone, 15-yard line, 10-yard line. Jack Sawyer strip sacks his old roommate, I guess what at Ohio State, Quinn
Hmm.
Ewers, and takes it 83 yards to the house. And I'm like, of course that happened. And Fowler pointed it out immediately. He's like, you can't script that. Like, of course that happens to him. And that was a possibility all
Yeah.
game, right? And of course the he gets to him, and of course it literally ends the game. Um, I don't know, man. It is one of those moments like when that happened, I was like, team of destiny. Here it is. Like there's so many NFL
Yeah.
players from this team. He's one of them that we're gonna look back on this team when they win the national championship next Monday for our next show.
Look,
Yeah,
here's the thing. I mean, you want to draw comparisons. I Jack Sawyer is like the Ohio State Aiden Hutchinson.
yeah.
Like he's a Pickerington guy. He they told the story on the broadcast, which is great. Like junior year went to his first visit at Ohio State. He met with Ryan Day right after he got the job, and uh he felt, he always knew he wanted to go to Ohio State. He loved it. He got back home. He was like, he told his parents he wanted to commit, and his dad was like, "Hang on, it was your first visit. Go to some other places, see some other things."
No.
Then his dad took a nap, and he called up Ryan Day and committed
Of course.
immediately.
Yeah. Let's commit.
Yeah, yeah. And so he is Ryan Day's first recruit in his as the head coach.
That's really cool.
Um, so he's always been the guy, and there was always something missing where he's been getting a lot of flack during his time here, about not being the dog mentality that you kind of would expect from him.
Yep.
And so there were, the S word was thrown a lot, soft. Um, but that kind of changed towards the end of last year, and this year he's been really good. And then that kicked into a whole different gear
Oh,
during the
yeah.
Michigan game, because that Michigan game was not on him. He made a terrific play at the end of that game to put them in position to win,
Sure.
and the offense couldn't get it done. But then since then, he's just been a beast
He someday might
defensively.
have his golden jacket on 20 years from now, and I will be sitting there
Yeah.
saying 0-4 against Michigan. And that will always irk him
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
if no matter how long until Ryan Day does something different, his best players have not beaten Michigan.
It
So,
just
which
very bizarre with
I
how that's,
say
yeah.
because that's the beauty of like the whole college rivalry thing. But I also say that in saying, wow, like
We'll
I
we'll we'll
think
get
I
in.
think in the same breath he would say, yeah, thankfully Michigan beat us because we wouldn't have won steamrolled 4 games to the promised land. Um,
We'll
not that
get
they're
to
going
that
to
later,
steamroll
but
Notre Dame. Well, we'll get to it like here in a bit. Like it's
yeah, we'll
next.
we'll, we'll get to it later. But CJ Stroud did beat Jim Harbaugh, so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well done, sir. Well, yeah, badly too, actually. Uh,
But
uh,
yeah,
but Ohio State looks great. What did I say to you guys? Uh, oh, I can't really even repeat it on the cast. Took care of the Volunteers. Went done duck hunting. Went to the slaughterhouse. Now I don't know
yeah,
what this is. The national championship
yeah.
game against Notre Dame.
End of the
Uh,
rainbow. I don't
End
know.
of the
I But
time to
yeah,
steal the pot of gold. Let's go.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I was having a conversation with friend of the show Matt, and I, I gotta say this might be one of the biggest games Ohio State has ever played in the history of the program,
Mm,
because if you just put it in the context of a national championship game against Notre Dame,
yeah,
like Notre Dame, the only thing that would be bigger would be a national championship rematch against Michigan.
against
Like
Michigan
that
somehow.
that would
Yeah,
be like the only thing that's bigger.
right.
But probably Penn State as well. But like
I don't
it,
know, man. This is bigger than Penn State. This is a
I
bigger
would
deal,
say,
arguably.
yeah, it probably would feel bigger if they hadn't already played a couple times in the last couple years. But
Right, but
it,
the lore of Notre Dame and
yeah,
Penn State are not even comparable. Like we're talking about two of the oldest blue bloods in all of American sports in terms of their status and how much they mean to people. Very
yeah.
comparable, annoying fan bases.
I
Interpret
mean,
that any way you
like
want.
this is this is this is definitely like the Alabama Georgia national championship game for people that live in the North.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good way to put it.
Alabama Georgia is a huge title game matchup, but nobody north of the Mason-Dixon cares about that.
Well,
So
you're right, but I get, I see regionally, like I get what you mean. It's almost better. It's almost a bigger deal though because Notre Dame's not in a conference. They never have been.
yeah,
They have this aura about them. They have from a very, very long way. They're real like their history in terms of success goes further than Ohio State's. You know what I mean? In terms of what
mhm.
they mean to the sport. It just when I say that I mean just more success earlier in history is all I mean, folks. That's all I mean by saying that. And yeah, I actually agree with you guys. I think it's made that much more the fact that their head coach is an alumnus of the program through one of the best linebacking cores in the history of Ohio State football, of which is kind of every year. But you get what I mean. Like,
Mhm.
Marcus Freeman had his day, his day there as a player. and has done a great job at Notre Dame. Uh, I think I made the comment to you guys like if Marcus Freeman has a coaching boss battle, like in a video game setting, this is it. Battling
Yeah.
your entire way there to the national championship after a year where you lost to NIU amazingly. Uh, you know, uh, it's your alma mater, and not to mention, it's not only just your alma mater. It's like it's the Ohio State Buckeyes, and
Hmm.
maybe the best team on paper they've ever had, position for position, all 22 starters. So I'm with you. I think this. I think there's a lot riding on both programs, and I also think that regardless of who wins, that's like a new like chapter etched right into lore because it's arguable this is arguably the hardest championship either of them have won in terms of what it's taken to get here. You get what I mean? Um, I'm adding to what you're saying.
Hmm.
I'm adding to the stakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. I can. I would say Ohio State ha has had an incredibly difficult path to get here. I mean,
They've had a
Tennessee
harder
was
path.
Tennessee wasn't a pushover by any means. Oregon, was allegedly the number one team in the country.
Well, don't look at it just this playoff. Look at the whole season. Ohio State's schedule was harder. They were in the best
Yeah.
conference in college football. I'll say that with my chest because the SEC is actually the best conference in college basketball this year, men's college basketball,
Hmm.
but I think women's too. Uh, Notre Dame didn't have that. Notre Dame's schedule was just flat out easier. It was, and they lost NIU. And I'm looking at the indicator right now. Ohio State right now on Wednesday, it'll be Thursday by the time you hear this, are 9.5 point favorites in this game. And their ball power index, matchup indicator is at 53.3% to 44.7%. That is accurate to me. That is all accurate to me. If you're going to tell me that Ohio State might ultimately win this by more than a touchdown, that would be my prediction. I'm just going to go ahead and say that.
Yeah, yeah. So that yeah. I mean, I'm trying to like not feel a false sense of security because I was trying to just stay realistic with Texas and thus like when the offense kind of fell apart in the first half and I got real concerned there. I was kind of not shocked. But this to me is kind of like the exercise your demons playoff run. Like they've been having to win games. Like this to me was the way that they had to win a game, like the way that they usually lose them. Like
Yeah,
they have lost this game every single time before.
yeah,
Like your offense stalls, you have to get it done in a hard fought, gritty way, and they just never got it done up until now.
right. I would agree with everything you just said. There's something I have to go ahead and just admit on the show, and that's that as annoyed as I am with yourself being like a Walmart fan of this team and having no affiliation with the school, as I'm well known for, far and wide, I don't like Walmart Wolverines or Buckeyes or fans of any school you didn't attend. That being said, when I look at these two teams and the way their fans are, to me, the way college athletics has gone, it's like they're both professional teams anyway. You know what I mean? Like they basically are now. You know, I've always thought, and it's not even thought, like it's just a known thing. Ohio State's fan base is the way it is because this state has never seen any semblance of consistent winning football in your lives at the professional level. So of course you're going to root for the one team that basically is like a professional team in the middle of the state. Makes perfect sense to me. I'm not saying that Ohio State wouldn't have a really high following if the Browns and Bengals had like the Steelers history. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that, but all of that kind of also applies to Notre Dame. You know what I mean? So I can't sit here and say that I necessarily have any rooting interest in this game, like a lot of the folks who are going to come across this show might. Other than I hope it's a really good game. I genuinely hope that it's like actually like the previous two semifinals we
Hmm.
saw. That being said, I still think Ohio State's. I literally was watching the end of Notre Dame Penn State Casen with a Notre Dame fan, and I said, it's going to be really really funny when Ohio State wins both of their next two games by two touchdowns at least, and then they beat Texas by two touchdowns.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did let that person know that when it happened. So I was like, hey, I'm just saying, Ohio State, that, yeah, like I said, it's Ohio State and Notre Dame in the Everyone Doubted Us Bowl, and we're mad at you. So
Yeah,
we're going to show you by winning the national championship.
I don't know if you would quite get this, but people from Ohio might understand it. Twitter is calling this the Youngstown Super Bowl, the Northeast Ohio Super Bowl.
Is it
I
because like
mean,
Maurice Clar or not Maurice Claret? Is it because like Freeman was
no, well,
recruited by Jim Tressel?
no, it's mostly just
Okay,
because like Youngstown in that area have like a really high there's a pretty high like population of Notre Dame fans there too.
there.
Like
Oh, I
I don't know.
know.
I think it's because of like maybe maybe there's a higher percentage of Catholics over there. I'm not really sure, but um
Checks out if it is.
probably because you have like Archbishop
Yeah,
Hoban,
absolutely.
David Zimmer. Yeah. So yeah, so there's just a lot of like Notre Dame fans in that area as well as Ohio State fans.
And it's Ohio.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's also crazy here too, and because the city of Dublin is going nuts, because everybody's favorite son Brady Quinn, obviously, along with also resident AJ Hawk.
Yep.
So it's a pretty significant thing here in Central
That's
Ohio.
one of the best pieces of the lore between these two schools when AJ Hawk sacked his future brother-in-law during the game.
I expect Mrs. Hawk to be in attendance with her split jersey. That'd be hilarious.
If she's wearing the same split jersey with the two of them that she had on and like whatever that was,
Like
the
2007, yeah.
2007 Fiesta Bowl, that would be amazing. I just remember that being one of those moments where I'm like, the beauty of a great producer. I mean, AJ Hawk just plants Brady Quinn in the ground, and then they immediately show her. Like, what's going through her head right now? It's like, oh, I hope my brother's okay.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
great sack, honey. I mean, it's wild, man. That's but right there, that's the beauty of it, right? That's like there is family connections between these two schools and stuff like that. And this is the latest chapter in a not all that long history between the two of them, but probably the big not
Hmm.
probably is the biggest stakes, right?
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
the
No, I
Natty,
mean,
man, in the first ever
I,
12 team playoff. So,
yeah, I was just thinking about, I was watching the last one 10 years ago when they beat Oregon. It was That was a great time. And the path they took to get to that one was crazy too. So it's winning the first 14 playoff, winning the first 12-team playoff would be cool.
yep. And
10
and
years apart.
and 10 years apart, it would be very cool. And it would also be another reminder that for Ohio State to have a chance at the national championship, they have to change the rules. Anyway, moving on. Uh, both times they did that and they won the first one. So, anyway, is it time to get to the NFL? I think
Yeah, let's get to
we
it.
can go game by game. We're not going to spend as much time on these as we go, but Super Wild Card Weekend, we're going to close the show out here, was this past weekend. And I have a confession to make to you, Casen. I have to say this. I did a lot of monitoring of games this weekend. I didn't watch as many as I really would in previous years because I cannot shake the feeling of, bro, I don't care about the wild card round. The Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
only one game, and I mean this. There's only one game that I watched zero of. I watched a little bit of every game. I promise I did. There's only one game that I swear to you I watched zero of it. I had alerts on and I watched not a down. And it was the second game we're going to talk about. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's go in order here. First game was Texans Chargers, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the Texans got the Texans time slot, which was the afternoon game on Saturday, which is what they played in every single time.
Yep.
You can about bookmark that one every single year.
They balled out, man. I mean, I even saw one of their offensive like sequences. They balled out for how they played most of the year. I will say that. The Texans did over the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, I look, yeah, I will say, I don't know for sure how much of it is specifically the Texans winning and how much of it is just the Chargers charging.
Yeah,
Which
I knew charging was going to be
it
mentioned.
like to me, look, I mean this like in all with all due respect to Mr. Justin Herbert, but he basically is Philip Rivers, and it's objectively
Mm,
hilarious. Like
mm,
you can, like some things change, some things stay the
stay the
same.
same.
He's basically Philip Rivers with 10 less kids, and it's. I mean, it's because
Wow.
it's true. Like I mean, like
No,
he's
I
an above
mean,
average quarterback that just falls apart at the weirdest times,
when I saw his
and
line in the playoffs, like, okay, one touchdown pass, four interceptions. It's like, well, that's sure. That's sure. If that doesn't say Chargers playoff
Fun
football, I
fact,
don't know.
fun fact, fun fact. Justin Herbert has more interceptions in the year 2025 than he did in all of 2024
That is wild,
because he
man.
threw 4 picks in that one game and three the entire season.
So shout out to Justin Herbert. You just may not be able to play in the playoffs. I still think there's an incredible disparity between the Texans and the Chiefs, which is going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
as long as the Chiefs don't come out like rusty from their pretty significant layoff,
right.
they should be fine because like I was sort of getting to it. I mean, you look at some of these at just sort of how the Texans got their points.
Yeah,
A lot of them were on like there was a pick six in there. A lot of them were from the turnovers
right.
that the Chargers gave them. So as long as the Chiefs are ready, and come out and play relatively clean, they should be able to win that matchup.
I agree. And moving on, because I have nothing else to add really for that one. The next game of the day was the Saturday night game between my Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, and I watched zero of this game. I watched none of it. I'm dead serious. I did not see a single
Because you knew
down.
exactly how it would go.
I knew exactly how it was going to go, and
Yeah.
with everything that's been said, I think probably the loudest I've ever heard for Tomlin's job has been this year. I'm not really going to sit here on the cast and say whether I agree with it or not. All I am going to say is that he's going to be right back here next year, and we are going to be right back here next year. I mean, I really to say you're in NFL purgatory, it's a really weird spot to be in because I won't make this long winded. I was asked like quite a few years ago by a friend who is traditionally a fan of a team that doesn't do very well. I forget exactly what sport we were talking about, but we did get to the Steelers. I think it was football. We did get to the Steelers, and that person asked me, like, what does it feel like when your team doesn't play well or whatever it is, and all that stuff. And I said, well, your expectations scale to how your team normally does. That's really how it is. I mean, like if the Pirates made the postseason, I would think we would just won the World Series. You know what I'm saying? Because that just never happens. It's happened like twice, three times in my life. The Steelers making the playoffs every year and losing, getting blown out basically in the first round is so far not the standard set by the organization that constantly is like all we got to do is make the playoffs. And it's just kind of amazing. I saw an athletic article where there was I forget who it was in the quote, but the quote literally said they have tremendous success because they'll never change. And they'll never win a playoff game again because they'll never change. And I said, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers right there, right now, under Mike Tomlin. I thought it was very fascinating. Shout out Big Cat, who pointed out that Tomlin essentially has no coaching tree. He's not really cultivating young coaches under him, which is a
Hmm.
problem in today's NFL. It's always like older veterans or dudes who are just kind of yes men around him. There is a stubbornness there. I'm so sick of like these plugs on offense, and then the defense is either too injured or too tired by the end of the year because they've had to win every game to get there. I mean, it's enough now, but
No,
unfortunately, we're never going to be bad enough to get another franchise quarterback. And that's
I
why I'm
mean,
almost like tank for somebody. Like, I'm almost at that point. And we had a chance to do it when Ben was out for the season. And what was the organization's response to that? They traded our first round pick for Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, I think back to things like that now, and it's just like that was cool at the time. And then Ben retired a few years later, and we had no answer then and none now. Rant
yeah.
over. I'll see you right back here next year, Casen, when we do the same thing. Go ahead.
I I do just want to at least see who you could have gotten in that draft, by the way, real quick.
Oh,
Uh,
well, okay. Well, at the expense of that taking a while, I'll just add one
but
more thought while you look. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Did you find it already?
No, I was just gonna say though too is that
Go ahead.
sort of on the topic of like Tomlin's personnel, like I, I mean the defense has always been good enough to win you playoff games. The issue for the last 8 years, well, basically since Ben left, the issue has been the offense, and and Tomlin has refused to even find anybody remotely competent at coaching offense, and even back before Ben left, it's just like you look at who he was bringing in,
Yeah.
like the last person that it really feels like he tried to find anybody that was good at that was when he hired Todd Haley, and that
Right.
blew up so
And
bad.
that exploded badly. Yeah.
Because I mean, he hired him from the Chiefs, and it was like, okay, well, maybe he can bring some of that Chiefs offense from the Andy Reid stuff.
And
But
literally nothing good happened.
yeah,
Literally, and I'm not. I refuse to put it any on any of these guys. I just, yeah. Uh, that being said, we did go up against probably the best Ravens team that they've had since we've been alive, Casen. I say that entirely. They are incredible. Lamar Jackson is amazing. They went 13 plays from their own 5 yard line down the field on the Steelers and ran it 13 times and scored. I mean, that's all you got to say. But um, King Henry's coming for it, man. He's coming for the crown. As I said last week, I think this team is good enough to beat the Bills or the Chiefs. I don't think they're good enough to do it in the same playoffs. And if they do, well, then okay. Like I'll be like, all right, they if they do that, they should be the hands and over favorite to win the Super Bowl, whoever it's against. I don't care who it's against. Um, so they played amazing too. And I just, you know, the game was over a week before it started. I mean, it just was. From the moment they announced the matchups, I was like, all right, so Ravens, Bills, second round.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you got anything else to add?
Uh, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of taking a look at the 2020 draft. Uh, when so your pick got traded to the Dolphins for Minka. The Dolphins drafted an offensive tackle. Uh, the pick before that was CeeDee Lamb, by the
Mm.
way. And then a couple picks after that was Justin Jefferson. So, but if you don't have Minka, you're probably and you're probably tanking. Like if they would just approach it as tanking, then they probably would have had a worse record. And then they could have gotten Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert. Yeah. So it might be nice to have Joe Burrow on your team right now, but
I mean, you know what? Well, there was no universe in which we were going to fall that far. But I mean, for the number one overall
Herbert.
pick, yeah, Herbert though, I just keep thinking, well, that's what it's going to take, and it's going to come down to the Rooney's wanting to change anything or not. Because
So I can
I,
tell
I
you
am I
right
am
now.
fully expecting the Rooney's to be fully fine with us just making the playoffs for oblivion until Mike Tomlin wants to retire, which could genuinely be another 10 years. So until anything changes, I'm done. Like, and I'm gonna say
Yeah.
something. One last thing I said to someone today. I feel a little bit about the Steelers a way I've never felt about them in my life, and I really, really hate to say this. It's a dreaded word, and it's a word I would never have used about the Steelers until this season. Apathy. I'm apathetic. I never thought I never thought I'd ever feel this way about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I feel that way. Like if you're not going to change anything, not really. If you're not really going to make any significant changes, then why should I care? We're going to lose in the playoffs every year. So that's all.
I well look, you'll I think get to root for your new quarterback Kyle McCord coming up. So
Wait, what?
I was just saying that like it
Oh,
feels like the
okay, all
most
right,
Steeler
okay.
thing. I It feels like the most Steeler thing to like draft Kyle McCord in like the fifth round or something and then just play
Yeah,
him.
yeah. No, I got confused.
It's
Yeah,
just like that's kind of the Mason Rudolph thing.
yeah, exactly. So,
Just some random
let's move
late
on
rounder.
here. Next game I have here was Bills Broncos, absolute blowout. I mean, do we really got to talk about this? long.
No, I mean I'm sure Broncos fans were happy for like 5 minutes, and then
Yeah,
they never really got anything again. So
no. Bills moved right on. The epitome of what I'm talking about. I'm like, yeah, the wild card is so lopsided now. Next one I had here was the NFC actually. Eagles Packers, I believe, was the next one down there.
yeah.
This was a game. I mean, honestly, Philly came right out, did what they had to do. When I was watching, it was 10-0 Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Down the stretch, it really was just the Eagles getting the job done. I mean, the Packers can be a little pesky in the playoffs. They are kind of how the Steelers used to be, a decade ago in the playoffs. So, any thoughts? I mean, I thought this also went pretty much by the numbers.
No, yeah. I mean, I think to me, look, I've been like first team all Jordan Love hater since he got drafted. I just I didn't like the pick. I thought it was dumb at the time, and I never liked what he had as far as
Yeah.
like his college resume. I thought that was a little bit dumb. Uh, and so yeah, I mean the good news is he's probably, I mean, they can move on from him soon if they need to in a couple of years. But I just think that it should be clear to the organization that he's not the guy like long term. Like he's not Aaron Rodgers. Like I don't like they're gonna have to like it'd probably be very hard to find somebody better just because it's really hard to find franchise quarterbacks now.
I would love to have a
But
Jordan Love right now on the Steelers, man.
I mean
Just some,
that's true.
that's my point. Like, and I hate to make that comparison, but the Packers and Steelers are very comparable in how, in the consistency and like the fact that they don't change a whole lot in their relative success in the NFC versus the AFC. I mean, you know what I mean. That's what I mean by
Hmm.
that. Um, yeah, and so I would love a QB like that right now. Someone at least young that we can build up and don't give me the whole Justin Fields thing. Don't do that. I don't think he's the guy either. So, but yeah, the Eagles did not falter in the playoffs like I thought would be bad if they had. So, um,
No, yeah, I mean, I Saquon had 119 on the ground.
mhm.
Beast.
Say quads and the Eagles move on. Next one I had here was the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Probably the best game of the weekend. Uh, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Commanders, continuing to be honestly the story of the year, in my opinion. Out of the ashes of the Snyder era and all that stuff, Jane Daniels and others play what is still a very good team led by Baker Mayfield, and they get it done. They get it done, and they're moving on. Thoughts on this game? Like I said, I this one I actually did watch a couple of series of. I've probably watched the most of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, I uh you you see, yeah, I mean, just watching Jaden Daniels play football is like wild. I mean,
He led
it's
them in rushing and passing yards.
yes, yes. I mean, look, he won the Heisman for a reason, and it's pretty abundantly clear that that translated to the NFL the way that they were hoping. And he's somebody to watch out for. I mean, in that division moving forward, he could be pretty pretty tough.
Absolutely.
Um, because I he's got some flashes of Lamar, he's got some flashes of Mahomes. I mean, he got to keep an eye out. I mean, because he could be the next guy um, for the next few years here if people don't figure him out quickly.
Well, I guess I will go ahead and just kind of pass that off. I mean, do they have any chance to upset the Lions this weekend?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I
I mean,
absolutely think so. Yeah, I think
the
so.
I mean, we saw last year the Lions get into a pretty scary game with Tampa Bay, kind of in the same situation. Was Tampa Bay
And LA,
uh
really. Well, Los Angeles too, both
Tampa
of them.
Bay upset the Eagles, then they go on the road to Detroit. So the Commanders beat the Buccaneers and they go on the road to Detroit. And so if the Lions come out sleepy and not fully in it, because they're riding high from winning the division.
These dudes are tough,
I
real tough.
mean, they could I mean it not even so much tough. It's just like they if they're not prepared for what they're gonna get with that offense. Because I mean, I look Ben Johnson versus Cliff Kingsbury is gonna be an interesting matchup for
Yeah, this
that.
game
So
actually could be like 44 to 45. Probably not. I'm just saying.
yeah, I'm just trying to see, like I'm just trying to see. Yeah, they didn't play already, but yeah, I mean, so it's yeah, it definitely I think will could get into like in the second half just an absolute shootout, and so it could be entertaining. I mean, I will say, I this could be the game of
I think this
of
has the
that
potential to
of that
truly
day.
outdo. This could outdo the excitement in Bills Ravens. I'm just saying, like, because Bills Ravens on paper looks amazing. Lions Commanders could be a better football game. So we can, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
crazier stuff could happen. It just seems like the Commanders just nuts stuff happens for them all year. Ever since they beat the Bears on the Hail Mary, man, it's just been like story of the year. um, moving on here, what I had the docket here. Uh,
That's funny. That is
what?
funny.
Would you see some? Wait, hang on. Is it show acceptable or no?
Well, I mean it. I'll just say
I'm
it.
gonna go
Just
with
looking at
no.
just looking at the Texans Chiefs game, the number is 41 and a half, and then the Commanders Lions it's 55 and a half. They
Oh
got
well,
two whole touchdowns higher. Crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. So yeah, it was good. I reel my joke back in. The last there's something poignant about this last game though too. Last game of the Super Wildcard weekend was the Vikings. It was going to be Vikings at Rams, but because of the fires, they moved the game to Arizona.
Hmm.
And this was the last game of the weekend because it was the Monday Night Football game. And it was essentially a blowout, but I also think something else good. There's two things at play here. Okay, I just want to point something out here. The Vikings tend to fall apart in the playoffs. It's just kind of what they do. There were
Yeah.
questions about the quarterback position. They lost to the Lions. They were not probably going to make a deep run. But suddenly you have this usually pretty stable Rams team, good in the playoffs, Rams team, who now all of a sudden have something to play for. I mean, you get what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, I that's kind of what I wanted to tie this into because when I saw that final score, I was like, because I was watching the first half a little bit. When I saw the final score, I was like, oh man, they just took the Vikings out basically, and I was like, you know what? They got a little something to play for now. They have a city to play for. They really do. They have a community to play for. They got guys on this roster who have been affected by this. Um, that goes a long way. It does. I mean, how many times have we seen that in sports where something happens and go down a list of tragedies here, but and then suddenly every team plays, better. The most prominent example I think of right off the top of my head is Boston Strong.
Hmm.
Um, but there's many examples. There's many examples. I'm just saying. Um, what I'm trying to say is look out Eagles because I think this is a hungry Rams team. I'm serious. You know?
No, I definitely am right there with you in that. Um, I've seen problems with this Eagles team,
Yeah.
and if there's anybody to take advantage of that, it's Sean McVay. And so it's just kind of like Sean McVay is always the guy that you're just like you don't really want to let him get hot with the team. And I said it last week. I was concerned about Darnold's performance with the Lions or against the Lions, and Uh, he did in fact like he came out exactly like I thought he would. Um, and he kind of turned back into the pumpkin. So Sam Darnold, rest in peace, your $150 million contract. Guess you're not getting that, buddy. Um, good effort though. Good effort.
No, but I think I got to commend him for kind of like just the career he's even carved out up to now. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens with him. I mean, he's become a journeyman quarterback like many, many, many before him and many, many after him. But even I didn't think that there was like this year with the Vikings left in him, you know,
He's
which
he's kind of like he's kind of like the the new yeah, he's the new like Sam Bradford, Ryan Fitzpatrick that like he'll he can come in and like probably have a decent year, but like you're not doing anything.
Is he a
Like
free agent this offseason?
I there's been a lot of conversations. I think so, but I think they could tag him if they wanted to. I don't really know for sure.
Watch him be like,
Yeah.
watch like Fields back him up in Pittsburgh next year. Like, I don't know.
I
That's,
yeah, he'll go
I don't know.
somewhere that needs one. Yeah, I
That
because
is if Russ
yeah.
doesn't get re-signed. We'll see what the Steelers decide to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was all of the games. Just kind of looking ahead at the matchups. We didn't do a formal prediction here, but I think we made a really good case, Casen, for some of these maybe flipping the other way. My pick to win the Super Bowl is still the Chiefs. I mean, I'm not even kidding when I
Yeah.
say I think they're going to win that by at least two touchdowns. I don't want to be disrespect. It's an NFL game still, so I don't want to be like, oh, they're going to win 45 to 6. No, but they'll win. They may start slow and then they'll Chiefs it out. They'll just turn it on and win. Um, I mean, do you disagree, pseudo Chiefs fan?
No, no, not at all. I mean,
It's
I'm
one
trying
of
to
the
think.
stupidest bits our show has ever had.
I still have no idea who's going to win that Ravens Bills game. But
Right. That
yeah,
I guess I'm on record saying, for your standing prediction to take place yet again this year that the Bills window is closed, the Ravens would have to win that game. That being said, I don't really care who wins that game. I will say that the feelest good Super Bowl I could have here for me personally would be like Bills Lions. You know what I mean? I think multiple people have
hmm
said that. You got the Lions who have finally made it to a Super Bowl, Bills who make it back to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to lie, if that happened and the Lions won, that would be the funniest thing ever. Uh, unless you're from Buffalo, New York, obviously. They get back to the Super Bowl and guess what? They lose it again.
look,
That would be brutal. That
mhm.
being said, one way or another, some feel good story, some group of people is going to be happy. That would be the feel good
Here's
story. That being said, it's probably going to be like Chiefs and Eagles or something.
yeah, but
Again,
here's the thing. We we're not entirely that far away from a Commanders Ravens Super Bowl.
okay.
I we said
Ooh,
the
the Beltway.
we said the Lions
No, the
game could be
Metro.
dicey.
The
Yeah.
Metro Super Bowl. That's what that would be.
It, if they could somehow get past the Lions, I'd say the Rams beat the Eagles too. And Commanders Rams, I like the Commanders in that. And and
Even if it's the
yeah,
Eagles,
I
the
mean,
Commanders can beat their divisional team. They can do it.
yeah. Yeah.
They can do it. I really believe that. I mean, so I'm with you. I mean, I think there's something here. And if this Ravens, like I said, if this Ravens team is this for real that they beat the Bills and the Chiefs on their way on the road both places, well then yeah, okay, give them the Lombardi. Jeez, like
Yeah, look, here's my thing.
okay,
As the resident Chiefs fan on the show, I think I want the Bills to win that game because the Ravens concern me a bit more, just because shutting down Lamar is basically impossible. Um,
not to
and
mention Derrick
and
Henry.
yeah, and Derrick Henry, and that just they got lucky last year in Baltimore, with just sort of the way that game played out. And I would, if given the option, would prefer not to play them again because I think the Bills are a bit more their like game is a bit similar to the Chiefs to where it's just stopping Lamar and Derrick Henry is just impossible. So I would hope that the Bills can get that done for the Chiefs' sake, but
Was kind of wild to watch Derrick Henry just run right through and right past his former teammate Minka Fitzpatrick against the Steelers, on his way to like a 70-yard touchdown run or whatever it was. I'm like, yeah, if this doesn't scream where we're at right now. I would if the whole resident Chiefs fan garbage aside, I would agree that should concern Chiefs fans more. I will say I've probably been a little bit disrespectful to the Bills, but I feel like our show has been in general. I mean, the Achilles heel for the Bills is the defense. I don't see any evidence to support that the Bills are going to slow the Ravens down. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. They'll have to outscore them. I mean, you know,
mhm.
and the Ravens have a more sound defense. I think they can slow down Josh Allen. And they show they various teams have showed that he is slow down a bull if you spy him at all times. That's all you got to do. So,
I, I
the
mean,
Steelers
it's
had just the defense last year and were 8 points from winning that game. And then Josh Allen, it was earlier in the game, but Josh Allen did cheat against the Steelers. He did the fake slide, and then they scored a touchdown. I mean, just saying.
for what it's worth, that game's pretty much even. From what I can tell,
It says Baltimore 1 point for me.
yeah, I mean it's
That's
Baltimore
that's
minus
a coin
one, but
toss.
then it's Buffalo minus 105. So basically, yeah, it's gonna end up being a coin toss, which I can agree with because it's essentially completely contingent upon just kind of how the game goes because
Hmm.
either side can win pretty easily. So yeah.
I will. Well, we'll be here to talk about it. I think this is poised for much better games and overall than we had this past weekend. And like you, I'm excited to talk about it. I will say a special shout out to Morgan yet again for just the incredible helmets
Mhm.
cover, bringing that together last week, and went ahead and put the X's on myself. I feel like training wheels off. Like I feel happy about that with Photoshop and things like that now. So you'll see that as the cover this week. But any last thoughts, man? Because that is the show for this week.
Uh, I mean, I think we've talked about everything.
I think we have. I wore this hat today because I'll acknowledge just a couple of Penn stories that are a little bit melancholy. But Tristan Jari waived by the Penguins today. I wish you all the best. Penguins are in a weird spot. They got to make changes. One other thing, and this is hopefully going to get rectified at some point. Evgeny Malkin's house was broken into. He becomes the
Yeah.
latest in the first one in Pittsburgh I've heard of, burglarized, and apparently all three of his Stanley Cup champion rings are missing. Uh, Absolutely terrible. I wish all the best with that situation, but I wore this hat today, my Penguins hat, like in support of those guys at all times, obviously, and just saying, "Hey, we're in your corner." Even Tristan Jari, like, "Hey, man, thank you." You know what I mean? Appreciate it. But that's all we got, man. That's all we got. Thanks everyone again, always
Yeah.
so much for listening, watching, however you consume this ridiculous cast we do. And
Cavs lost to the Pacers, but then they beat them.
yeah, but they're an absolute juggernaut. And honestly, the way with as fun as the NBA playoffs have been the last like 3 years at least, um, I'm looking forward to this because the Cavs I think are very much going to be in the mix, and I'm obviously now back in the North, so a lot of their play directly
I,
affects me weekly.
I mean, my brain is like completely broken because the Cavs have a 6 game lead on Boston for the 1 seed in the East.
Yeah, the
And
Boston won last year. They're winning. Their drive to win has cooled. It's time for
yeah,
a new team to emerge out of the East. Why not? Uh, why not the Cavaliers?
MVP chance for Spida.
There you go. There it is. And we'll talk about that in due time as well. But that beeth the show. Again, thanks everyone so much for listening, watching as and feel like we've ended the show like 3 times, but for real this time. This is Kellan,
This is Casen.
and we'll see you as always at the next stop.